So in this video, we're going to label a neuron. So I have a picture of two different neurons here, just because I wanted you to see. So this right here is the cell body, and the soma and these little things coming out are the dendrites, and this long thing here is called the axon. So the information comes in on the dendrites, comes through the soma, and ends up exiting through the axon. And the one we're going to label is here below. It is the same. The difference is it's got this myelin sheaths on it. So most of our neurons do have a myelin sheath, and we'll talk about that, what it does. But I want you to see what the axon is. The axon is here, and it's actually underneath that myelin sheath that we got going on there. So let's label this together, and then we're going to talk about the different parts. So up here, all these little tree-like branches are called dendrites, and we want to grow dendrites because that helps us learn when we talk about. So those are dendrites. This one here is pointing to the whole middle structure, and that is called the cell body, also known as the soma. So cell body, also known as the soma. We will be using that term. And this is just pointing to the nucleus of the cell. That's where that DNA is. Okay, and so this whole thing that's in the background there, as I showed up above, so in the background, that is the axon. So starting from here, going all the way over here, that is the axon. So in the background you can see it. It does have stuff around it. And so this insulated material, this bubble thing that is there, that is called the myelin sheath. And so not all your neurons have that, but a lot of them. We'll talk about what that does. That is the myelin sheath. And this is pointing to the little cell that actually is responsible for making this myelin sheath. And on this particular one, this is called a Schwann cell. And so that is pointing to each of those little things in the middle. That is the cell that actually makes the insulation. So the Schwann cell here, so that is there. This is pointing to the gaps in between the myelin sheath, and that's known as the nodes of Ranvier. We'll be talking about all of these parts. So Ranvier, it's French. And then here on the end, so the ends of all of these are called the axon terminals. And then we're going to write down below what's kind of going on a little bit. And then this little spot right here, as we're leaving the cell body before we enter the axon, this is known as the axon hillock. Very important spot there, the axon hillock. That right there, the entrance into that axon. So we're going to see that information is going to come in. So we're going to have stimulus come in to our dendrites. Eventually we're going to trigger this axon hillock, and we're going to send an action potential down there. So let's write just a little bit of information. So our dendrites, they're going to be receiving the stimulus. Your axon, let's just put some little stars on here. Axon, that is where your action potential will travel down. So you're going to hear me say action potential quite a bit. So that is basically like a bolt of electricity is going to be going down through that. So think of like a voltage signal is what an action potential. I will be putting it as AP as we continue on. So anytime you see me write AP, that's not anatomy, physiology, but action potential, like a voltage, is going to travel down your axon. And then we've got your axon hillock. That's important because that is the trigger zone for the action potential. So that is the trigger zone, the starting gate. If you've ever run track, you know, you line up and someone fires the gun and you start, that's what the axon hillock is, the spot where everything's going to start going with this voltage signal. So the trigger zone for the action potential. And that's kind of important. And we are going to talk about the myelin sheath. So if it's myelinated, the myelin sheath, that is the insulated layer. It's like almost like a jelly roll substance that surrounds layer on the axon. We only see it on the axon. And it's going to help speed up the action potential. Speeds up action potential. And let's put a little bit more. We've got those Schwann cells. We're going to look at those on another video, but more times we say it, maybe we'll make it stick. Schwann cells, they're the ones that are making the myelin sheath. Make myelin sheath, but they only make them, we only see the Schwann cells in the peripheral nervous system. In another video, I'll call it PNS, peripheral nervous system, basically not part of your central nervous system. In your central nervous system, they're called oligodendrites that are going to make the myelin sheaths. So Schwann cells are part of the peripheral nervous system. And then we have the nodes of Ranvier. Whoops. And those are the gaps between the myelin sheaths, and we're going to see that is going to help the conduction go faster, and we'll talk about that. And then our last one is the axon terminal. And what we're going to see happen at the axon terminal, terminal means end, so we are looking at the end of the axon. And that's a lot of magic, and so we're going to really specifically talk about the ends of the axon firing onto a muscle. So at the end of the axon, some exocytosis. What does that mean? Some spitting out and of a neurotransmitter. And we're going to be talking about firing onto a muscle. They can fire onto other things, so there's all kinds of neurotransmitters, dopamine, all kinds of neurotransmitters, but the one that we're going to do is going to be acetylcholine. So we might as well get used to see, we call it ACH, acetylcholine, and that is going to end up on a muscle channel that's going to cause all muscle movement. So that's what's happening at the end of the axon. All right, so that's just the very basics of a neuron, and so we've got our page labeled, and so we'll see you on the next video.